Hello, welcome to Wednesday. Hopefully you did a real good job on those first 13 words of your vocabulary words. If you haven't done them, you should turn this tape off or video off and go back and make sure you write those down on your vocabulary list. They would remind you about the fact that we're talking about ecosystems. We're talking about how ecosystems are made out of biotic, living, and abiotic sources, non-living sources. We talked about how the ecosystem is how both of those interact with each other in a certain area. We said that animals and plants and all types of organisms need just the right environment to live in, and we called that their habitat. And that we said that all of these things rely on each other, so everyone has a niche or a job to do. We talked about the fact that everything is organized into different layers, from species and organisms to populations, as in all the organisms of the same type of species, into communities, which means all the living parts of the ecosystem, to an ecosystem, which means all the living and non-living parts. And all of these are parts of the biosphere, the part of the world where life exists. So we're going to continue on, and we just began to talk about this topic yesterday. It was the topic of energy. And we mentioned that energy is the fuel that we need in order to do of all of life's functions. We mentioned that the sun is the source of energy for the majority of all life here on Earth. Well, we have a way of describing that. We use words such as food chains and food webs, but really what we're talking about is energy moving. This is a picture that is in your notes, and these words are the ones that you're going to have to write inside the pyramid on your notes. If you know anything about a pyramid, you know that the base of the pyramid is what supports all the other layers. Without that support, you can't put this triangle upside down. That tiny little end will not support all of the others. But if you notice, the producers are really, really important in ecosystems. They support all the other areas. And that's why when we draw a model of this, we usually draw a triangle and we put the producers down at the bottom. Notice too on the slide that there's an arrow going up. It's showing you that energy is coming from the producers and traveling up through all the other consumers until it gets to the top. So it's a very important triangle. I would take a second and have you write all these things down, and then we're going to talk about them. Producers, you remember, are the plants predominantly. Primary consumers, those are the things that eat producers. And that's all they eat. They don't eat other organisms, they just eat producers. So that's your grasshoppers and rabbits and little insects and stuff, things that eat just plants. Those are primary consumers. Secondary consumers do a couple things. Not only do they eat plants, but they also eat primary consumers. So you start having something that will eat a cricket, but also eat fruit. These things eat both carnivore, or eat both producers and consumers. And at the very top, the tertiary consumers, they just eat consumers. They just eat meat. That's what all consumers are made out of. They just eat meat. And so they're at the way top of it. But in order for them to get any energy, they have to eat something that ultimately has eaten something that ultimately ate producers. All of the energy that you have in your body comes from, ultimately, from the producers. And again, we know the producers get that energy from the sun. That's why they're producers. So all of this relies on each other. And there's three different types of consumers. I kind of gave you a definition of them as we went along. There's carnivores, herbivores, and herbivores. So three of them. And on your notes, you have herbivores listed first under your triangle. Herbivores eat only producers, plants. Herbivores eat only producers. Carnivores, on the other hand, they're at the very top of the pyramid. They're tertiary consumers. And remember what I said about them. They eat only consumers. And you can put in little parentheses next to that, meat. Carnivores eat only consumers. They eat meat. And finally, the omnivores, which is what you and I are, by the way, we eat both. We eat producers and we eat consumers. So we can have lettuce and strawberries and peanuts and watermelon and corn on the cob, and boy, am I getting hungry. We eat all those things. All of those are producers. But I also like to eat steak, and I like to have a good hot dog out on the grill, and all the other meat products that I eat. So I also eat consumers. So 3 different words. Carnivores, they're the tertiary ones. They eat only consumers. There's the herbivores that eat only producers, and there's the omnivores that eat both. So go back up to your pyramid, and I'd like you, listen carefully so you know what to write. On the side of your pyramid, right next to where you wrote producers, on the side, just write the word plants to remind yourself that the producers are plants. On the triangle, on your notes, where you wrote inside, you wrote primary consumers. On the outside of that, I'd like you to write the word herbivores. And on the outside of where you wrote secondary consumers, I'd like you to write 2 words, carnivores and omnivores. And finally, up at the top, where you had to fit in tertiary consumers, I'd like you to write the word carnivores. Now, energy can't be created. It can't be destroyed. The only thing energy can do is change form. And we can see in that pyramid that we just made that energy came from the sun. The plants took it and packaged it up into glucose, packaged it up into their own food, and they used it, and so did anything that ate plants used it. Then those consumers, when they got eaten, the energy transferred again. It moved again from their bodies to the next organism's bodies, and it kept right up the pyramid. But the energy didn't get decimated and gone. It just changed forms from one organism to another. Now, here's a problem. And on your notes, I believe your next line says, every time energy is used by a system, some of it transforms into waste energy. I'd like you to take a circle and circle the word waste energy, because that's an important word, waste energy. Energy that is waste energy is energy that can't be used for the desired function. What does that mean? Well, let's go back to our car. We have a beautiful car. Maybe it's a 2020 Corvette, metallic blue, beautiful car, just gorgeous. And I know that I want to go somewhere. So I know that a fire is energy. So I go down to the fire pit down in my backyard, and I gather up a whole bunch of logs, and I catch them on fire, and I carry them in a nice metal bucket, and I try and cram them in my car because my car needs energy to go. Will that make my car go? It might not make my car go the way I want it to. It probably will make my car go up, as in explode and be gone. So waste energy is energy that can't be used for the desired function. It's still energy, and it might be useful somewhere else, but whatever I want it to do, it can't do it. My fire, it can't make my car go. It is energy, and it would work for something else, like keeping something warm or whatever, but it's not being able to be used for the desired, what I want it to do. And that happens a lot when energy is passed from organism to organism. Take a look at this picture. If you notice, the solar energy is coming down from the sun and it's going into the producers. From the producers, notice there's a whole bunch of arrows. There's an arrow that points straight to the rabbit, and it says chemical energy, and that the rabbit is a primary consumer, which means that the rabbit is eating the producer, and the producer is providing energy for it. But there's other arrows leading away from the producers. There's one leading straight up in the air, and it says heat on it. That's waste energy. That's energy that the plant has tried to package up, but it can't be used for helping the rabbit. So it's just lost into the environment as heat. Now take a look at the rabbit. The rabbit has an arrow pointing away from it toward the hawk. A hawk has come to eat the rabbit, and when he eats the rabbit, he gets energy. But not all the energy, because take a look at the rabbit again. There's another arrow leading away from it. It also leads away with the word heat. That means some of the energy that the rabbit got from the producer, he wasn't able to use to do all the functions of life that he did. In fact, some of that energy was lost as heat. Now, that's one reason why your body is warm. Your body's warm because you're using a lot of energy to make your cells work. But not all the energy you eat is able to be used by your body, and so you lose it as heat. And even when you go up to the tertiary consumer and you have the hawk, he also loses energy as heat. Every time you go up a step, you lose energy. You get to use some of it, but you don't get to use all of it. So on your notes, in the most animals, the waste energy occurs as heat. So let's go back to our pyramid for a second, and I have that pyramid down on the bottom of your notes. If you notice, every step of the way, look at how much energy that consumer ate is lost. When the producers get solar energy, they lose 90% of the energy that they obtain as heat. When an herbivore comes and eats a producer, it only gets to keep 10% of the energy that it ate, and it loses the rest of it as heat. And every step of the way, each step, only 10% is kept, but 90% of the energy is lost as heat. So in your notes, for every step up the energy use pyramid, 90% of that energy is lost as heat. So one thing we didn't mention, though, and it's not on that pyramid down on the bottom, is that the energy isn't lost after it goes through the tertiary consumer. It's not lost after it goes through that last consumer. It, again, changes form. And if you remember, the decomposers are the ones that take the final step. They're the ones that when the hawk dies or when poop is gone or whatever happens, the decomposers break it back down into the nutrients and they bring it back to the producers. So one last thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go up to the triangle that you have at the top of your page. You have producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers written on it. You have plants, herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores written on there. I'd like you to draw a line from the top of the pyramid all the way down to the bottom of the pyramid and put the word decomposer on that. Draw an arrow from the top all the way down to the bottom and put the word decomposers on that, because decomposers complete the circle of all of this energy moving. And the energy is not lost. The energy, again, is not only absorbed by the plants from the sun, the plants also get energy from the nutrients and the things that they absorb through the soil. All right, that's where we're going to stop for today. What I would like you to do, and again, you do not need to hand this in today, I would like you to do vocabulary 14 through 19. So everything that's on the ecosystem vocabulary sheet, I want you to do questions 14 through 19. You do not have to hand it in to me yet. I will tell you when it's going to be handed in, but you need to follow all the directions on there. All right, guys, have a great day.